go through few things about if Japan can, why can't we? So it will be more like a story to hear, but it's about the management practices that Japan has followed and what has led Japan to kind of reverse from the state they were after the World War. I think few things to note actually. So if you look at this particular screen, you might see some of these companies, and the moment you look at these companies, the first thing that comes to probably each one of our mind is that, oh, they are the best in their class. So any company that you look at here, so you'll see that, oh, they are the world best, either first best, second best, or the third best. And we'll always say that these companies, if I buy a product from any one of these companies, so they will always stand out with other products. So this all, if you look at all those companies, so they all come from Japan. And then today they are standing aside any other company which was there in the world, but today they are the companies which are standing out, and which we can probably see that I am having one of those Sony television or a JVC set or a Toshiba or something like that, or if you say that I have a Lexus or a Toyota, you feel proud. So what actually is the story that has begun, and what has led Japan to kind of become such a powerful country from an economy perspective and also from a technology perspective? So let's look at that in a brief. This was Hiroshima in 1945. So I think in Hiroshima alone, close to around 130,000, if I have to put it, so it's 140,000 people died on the day itself when the bombing happened. Okay. And that bombing in Hiroshima and Nagasaki led to closure of Second World War, or surrender by the Japanese to the Americans, or the end to 15th August, actually this month itself, so 15th August 1945, where the ceasefire was called off. So in Hiroshima in 1945 was nothing. That was one of the big city in Japan, and then it lost everything, including the people, industry, and everything. And today, if you look at what Hiroshima looks like, it probably completely transformed. So this is what Hiroshima looks like. But then, where did it all start, and why did they achieve it, and how could they achieve it? Because if you look at World War and the birth of India, so it is almost near to each other, in the sense that 1945, after the World War, they were at the same stage as India was, and India got independence in 1947, and then India started progressing on its own path. So, and Japan was almost at the same time. So if you look at birth-wise, so they were all at the same time. And then what did Japan do differently than India, and why did it achieve? So I think that's what we'll look at it. These are few things which will come to some of the American minds when the Americans look at it. So Japan in 1945 was completely destroyed state, and they were looking for food actually. So even not one day extra meal they used to prepare, because they were not having enough food supply or grains so that they can prepare and eat the food. Even fish supply was not there, which was one of their main food. So what all it started, where post World War they were lost everything, and in the next 10 years, so which we are talking about 1950-55, so they caught up to the world, and they came very close to what Americans were. So they re-established their industry, and they came in, and by 1960 they started competing with America. So if you look at economy wise, where it evolved and where it drew, so they were one of the lost economies in World War. By the time they were 1970s, when the oil prices quadrupled in the world, so that was by that time, so Japan became one of the largest economies in the world. So they stood third after America and Soviet Union, then Soviet Union, which was USSR. So their growth was like close to somewhere in 95 billion to 1.2 trillion. That happened in 20 years, whereas US took half a trillion to 2.5 trillion. So which is basically 11 times is the growth that Japan had as compared to any other any other country in the world. So what exactly it all has began, and I think our title also talks about if Japan can, why can't we? So this particular title, so I think if you see at the bottom, it is a National Broadcasting Corporation documentary which was aired in 1980 in a prime time at 9:30 in the evening. So this actually shattered the whole world. So this was a documentary generally on evening 9:30. So you will see business news or world politics or the economics kind of a news. And there was National Broadcasting Corporation, which is one of the largest television company then and even now today, which we see it as CNBC in India. So NBC documentary came on in June 24th at 9:30. So, and if that said that if Japan can, why can't we? And suddenly the whole of America woke up that they realized that, so what did happen really in Japan actually? So, and then how did they kind of cope up? So that documentary had one key message for everyone. So what that message was that quality and productivity don't improve just by working harder, but by doing the right things in a smarter way. So that was the message which was telecasted. So then everyone started looking at what is that and what we need to look at as a smarter way. So this all started with Japan's destruction. So when Japan was in distress, American army, the moment the world war stopped, so American army was basically counting the number of people who are alive in Japan actually, and after the world war. So basically the census was going on, and there was a census master which was known as Dr. Edward Deming. So William Edward Deming, who was the census master who was doing a census in Japanese jungles. So when he was doing census there, then during that time when it was completely destroyed, so the king came together, and there are a few people joined and approached the king to start an institute called JUICE, which is Union of Japanese Scientists and Engineers, which we call it a JUICE. So that they wanted to start that one. So Kenichi Koyanagi was the guy. He kind of approached the then king and proposed that we would like to start an institute like this. And when he said that one, so it was always a green go ahead, because anything you want to start, because there is nothing, nobody has a funding, nobody will give you money. And then they said that go ahead and start it. And when Kenichi Koyanagi and Kaoru Ishikawa, so probably many of the professors would come across Ishikawa diagram actually. So Kaoru Ishikawa jointly together started the group called JUICE, Union of Japanese Scientists and Engineers. When they started that institute, sorry, 1 minute, I think I'm on, not on screen, I believe. Is visible?
Your screen is visible actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 50 presentation is visible.
So when they started Japanese Union of Japanese Scientists and Engineers, JUICE was started. So JUICE kind of was looking for some kind of a lecture, instruction, guidance in terms of how to set up the industries, how to grow the industries, and how to kind of promote it. So that time they came to know a person by the name Walter Shewhart, so which some of you must be aware of. So Walter Shewhart was the person who was working with Bell Laboratories and doing a lot of experiments. So he kind of approached the Walter Shewhart, but because Walter Shewhart was very aged and ill health, so he was not keeping well, so he couldn't fly. So he said that I have my team member or my shishya who is there in Japanese jungles, you can go ahead and approach. So that is when they approached the person called Dr. Edward Deming. So Dr. Edward Deming was doing he was known as census master. So any country which got independence after 1945, after the Second World War, including India, the census was done by Edward Deming. So he is the person who counted first you are so many number of people, and then subsequently everyone started counting, and the census base was laid down. So it's exactly what he was doing in Japan. So when he was doing that in Japan, so he was invited on a hot June, I think last week actually, so June 20th, I believe. So June 20th of 1948, he was invited in room to kind of give a lecture. So there were around close to 21 participants who participated in that lecture. So today you talk about Akio Morita, who is Sony Corporation's head. He was there. So Kaiichiro Honda, Saiichiro Toyoda. So all these people, you talk about the big names which are there. So there were 21 people who participated. And those 21 people revolutionized the Japanese economy. So that means there is something which he talked on that particular day, which led to the biggest economical change in the world. So probably we'll look at what exactly he told. So in the coming few slides, we'll look at it. So what Deming taught a few things, and then that basically became the foundation for Japanese industry to kind of start thinking and completely renovating itself. So he laid the foundation for that. So I'll just go to the next slide, look at what other people talked about Deming. So, and we'll see his teachings a bit. So basically what some people said that actually Deming as an initiator of the last in the series of 9 turning points of history's hidden turning points. And basically it starts with Apostle Paul and then it ends with Dr. Edward Deming. And other people said that in the years to come, Deming will be recognized as being one individual who led the biggest influence on the world economy during the 20th century. So there was one person who made this whole difference actually. So, and I think we need to understand what exactly he made and what he taught. There are a few stories I think which we need to kind of go through. So if you look at here, so I just took some snaps from Google. So basically, so this shows at the center is Kenichi Koyanagi, and the light on the left hand side of Kenichi Koyanagi is Edward Deming when he was in JUICE. So when Edward Deming was working in JUICE, so he kind of gave the foundations for so-called today's quality tools or the total quality management, lean thinking, or whatever you talk about today in the quality world, or statistical process control. So all of that foundation or sampling theories, many of us, we learned the sampling theories. So all of that foundation was led by Dr. Edward Deming in 1948 to 1950. So he ran a number of series of lectures. 1950 series of lectures was very, very popular series of lectures. So when he ran the lectures, he was given kind of Japanese are also like Indians. So whenever somebody does something, so that Guru Dakshina is something which is they always try to give it. So they started giving him money, but he knew that it is not right to take the money from Japanese because who are already in a disaster. So then what he said is that you accumulate that money and you reinvest that one by JUICE into industry so that you can promote the industry. So that is what he told. So when he told that one, so then Kenichi Koyanagi and Kaoru Ishikawa thought together with the JUICE body and then came out with a medal called Deming Medal. So even today also Deming Medal is given to those organizations which perform the best in the world. And the day any company which wins Deming Award, it's not like any other awards where it will be assessment is done in 3 days or 4 days. The award committee stays for 2-3 years with the company to help them to win the award and help them to perform better. So just to give you a story about how Deming Award, what is the mindset of the company people when some company receives a Deming Award. So it was once when the Deming Award committee members were there in Nagoya Toyota. So looking at the people, how they are performing their jobs and all. So they went to a kind of guy who was cleaning the toilets and they just asked him, "What are you doing?" So his obvious question, obvious answers, which you might hear from any toilet cleaner. Sorry. Yeah. So obvious answer that you might hear is that I am cleaning the toilets and I am keeping it neat. So, or you might say that I am giving emphasis on cleanliness. But the guy who was cleaning the toilets, probably you might see him in the hierarchy of Toyota, probably is one of the lowest level guy in the management or in the staff. He might be at the lowest level. The statement he gave was, I am contributing to the economy of Japan. So that kind of a pride that they embed into everyone, and I think this is especially for the faculty members. This is exactly what he did actually. So what Deming did was basically more like a teacher, mentor. He guided them, all the industry people, student, and then revolutionized them into becoming one of the best scientists, best engineers in the world who can perform into their companies. There are few things which to know about Deming Award, because India has a very close relationship with Deming Award. After Japan, India is the next highest award winning country, and Deming Award winning country. It was in 1980s. Till 1980s, America was not in a position to win the award. So then they couldn't cope up with that, and they started their own award. So today we always felt that American product was the best one. German product was the best one, but then they couldn't even win many awards there. So then they started their own awards to kind of stay in the market. So whereas India, so many of us may not be aware. So in 1920, since 2000, so I just made a list of few companies which won the award. So since 2000, India, around 32 Indian companies have won this award compared to even Japanese companies. Of course, Japanese have won much before that. Almost all the companies have won that one. But the number itself is mind-boggling. So that means India is in the right path actually. So right path, and it is basically the teachers and the new engineers who are coming out to go into the right direction, be committed and contribute to the economy. And always think big, what my nation can do rather than what I can do for what I can do for my nation rather than looking at what I can do only for my company. So when 2019, every year in October they announce Deming Award, because Edward Deming was born on 14th of October with the century 1900. He was born, so the award is always given in during October time. So somewhere around 30th October or so, it's fully gets announced. So this year when they announced, so if you look at around 5 companies which got the award, 4 of them are Indian companies. So I think it is very, very proud moment that for many Indian companies are coming into and winning this particular award. So now, when this person has made such a difference in the world, so what is that exactly he taught actually to the world? So, and what is that he taught to Japanese on the day when he visited Japan or he was there in Japan? So because that was something which was completely changed Japanese economy. When the title, as it says, if Japan can, why can't we? So till 1980, Americans were not even aware that there was an next door American who was going to Japan and doing the teachings, and he established Japan as a country, most competitive country against Americans. Even Americans didn't realize. And by 80s, he was already 80 years old, and he was already an angry old man. In Japan, he didn't take a fee also for his teachings. And when he started doing his 4 days and 8 days lectures in America, he started for 4 days, he started charging almost $1 million. So that was the fees that he charged to American organization. But for Japan, he did literally free, because he just wanted to tell, he was a teacher, he wanted to tell the people, and he wanted people to listen to him and adopt it. And then Japanese listened to him and adopted. So he was like very kind to them. And then when it came to USA, he was making it more like a commercial way. What did he tell actually? So I think you all would have seen this particular wheel, which is called as PDCA or Deming wheel. Of course, Deming called it as it is in his handwriting. Of course, I just copied from one of his books called Deming Dimension by Henry New. So where if you look at, so he called it as Walter Schwartz's cycle. So what he said is, anything that you would like to do, you need to plan a change, you carry out a change. After you do the execution, so immediately go back and see what is the result of that one and study that result, and then subsequently go back and act actually. And this particular cycle has to go on a daily basis, on a regular basis without fail. Whether you do a cooking, whether you do produce a product or anything, and you should always come back and say that I have more improvements to make. So that is basically what he gave. So this was one of the first things that he taught to Japanese people. Next. Also, so what he talked about is look at organization as a system actually. So production and then delivery, look it as a system, because before and even till recently, many Indian organizations, they look at suppliers as kind of with a different eye. But what he suggested is suppliers and customers are part of your system. So you need to make sure that they are part of your system, and then you need to involve them in making the decisions of your own company. So if you look at many of the Japanese companies, the way they are closely knitted and the way they work is, many of the Japanese companies, major companies, have got a shareholding into their suppliers. That means shareholding, having a shareholding will ensure that you will never let down your company. So that means the suppliers will never be let down anytime. Another thing which he said is that look at whole as a system. So when they started looking at, like for example, JVC, Sony, or Panasonic, if you look at all these companies, they have something known as cross shareholding, which is very, very unique in the world. So JVC has got a shareholding in Sony, Sony has got a shareholding in Panasonic, Panasonic has got in Sony, Sony has got in JVC. So like that, they have a cross shareholding. Probably we might be buying a Sony product, but at the end of the day, the money also goes to JVC. I mean, basically shareholders of JVC are the people who are saying, so it doesn't matter which one customer buys. The money is made by the same people end of the day, so or similar kind of a people. This is the concept which he led, and he told that you all need to be together if you want to go ahead and beat the world. You can't be eating your other person's pie. You need to be together and go together as eating the pie of others. So that is what was the concept he gave. So and then today, you hardly see that Japanese company bursting actually. So there are many American companies which will burst because of the shareholding or right support is not there. But you will never see Japanese company bursting. And if it has happened, then there is somebody else's investment is there, not Japanese investment, because Japanese investment always works that way. What he talked about on business actually. So he said that every time focus on improving the quality. Whatever you have made today is not sufficient. So the next day that you make, it has to be much better than what you are doing today. If you look at inventions, Japan has very less inventions. US has got all inventions. Most of the inventions are patented in USA. But whereas for a camera or a Xerox machine or any one of these items, or a fridge or a washing machine, any of the electronics or a computer for that matter, most of these patents are there in the USA. USA companies do that one. But if you're given a choice which company you would buy, you will definitely choose Japanese company over an American company. And it's quite obvious. And this was in till the 1960s. Japanese products were known to be shabby products and the cheap products in the American market. And they revolutionized that one. And by the end of 1970s, they proved that within 10-15 years time, they proved that if you are buying a Japanese product, that means you are buying a world-class product. So that is the difference that they made actually. So where that change took is, so the teaching happened in 1950s. So they focused on those teachings, and the young students who came into the industry started contributing by 70s. So it is all generation change, of course. So the lessons laid by their teachers, basically Edward Deming, so which started contributing at a later stage in the next 15-20 years time, who came into the industry, and they all started thinking in that direction. And then subsequently got into producing best of the products. There is a very knowledgeable, basically it is called a system of profound knowledge, which he laid down as in his lectures. Of course, it was in the 60s or 70s lectures he laid down. Initially, he laid very basic things. He talked about common causes and special causes for the world, which we all know today that in I'll probably come talk about variation, which he talked only one box he talked, but later on he talked about profound knowledge. So he talked about appreciation for the system, understanding the theory of knowledge, and then understanding the variation, and then psychology of the people. So this is what he talked about. Appreciation for the system. So what he told is everyone need to appreciate the way the systems work. So you can't go to a company and sell that one that this is wrong, this is not working perfect, that is not correct, this is not, they are not supposed to do like that and all. So if you have that kind of a mindset, you will not be able to contribute well to the economy. Whatever you are doing, you need to think that how, because you are part of the system. So you need to see that it is my system, it is my company. How can I make the change so that that little change can start thinking as customers at the end rather than thinking as my boss actually. So that is what has to come in. And another one, if you look at the third paragraph, what is told Japanese companies is you don't start competing yourself for the market share. This is something which is taught in every marketing management studies and every MBAs, or probably in even also in every engineering colleges as well. That very common practice of teaching is that you should increase your shareholding, in the sense market share of your product. But what he told is different. He said that don't increase the pie in the slice. You make the whole pie bigger. Increase your market itself bigger. Sell it to beyond the people whom you can sell. Don't take, Nissan doesn't need to take Toyota's market share. Nissan and Toyota together should go and sell someone who has never had a car. So increase your market itself. So that is what they told. And then that's where Japan started going to every country and started selling actually. If you look at the way Akio Morita, so Sony Corporation, Sony has done very few inventions, but what good Sony is good at is anything that you give, they will make the miniature of it. So Akio Morita, when he went in 1960s to America to sell it, so he used to stay in a room where the toilet was also not there. It was a public toilet where he used to go, and he was staying in a room actually. And that he was a CEO of, he was a founder of Sony Corporation. And today, if you look and down the line in by late 80s, he had his own chartered flight, which was flying from Tokyo to New York and also to California to sell his product. So that is the growth that he had, Akio Morita. So he was from a no toilet room to a luxurious suite where he was staying, and that is how they improved the product. So he said that increase the market or make the pie itself bigger. Second one is he talked about understanding the variation. So he said that every process has a variation. So even God made process called heartbeat. We always see that ECG, electrocardiograph, where you will see that the rays will go up and down. But as long as they are within the control, that is good enough. So if they are going out of control, that is where you need to take care of. So that is what he gave the theory of statistical process control for everything that you do. So that's a variation which he talked about. Third, what he talked about was human psychology. He said that every industry is made up of humans. So you need to understand the psychology of the people, and you need to become part of that one, and don't treat them as machines, because they are the knowledgeable people. They are contributing for your company, and then you need to treat them. So if you look at Toyota or any one of these Japanese companies, they don't let down their labors actually. So they, whatever, if the person, even if they have to reduce the number of jobs, they will take out those people and give some different job, but they will never take them out of the company. Toyota, since its inception, they had one 1948, 46 or 48, somewhere around that, they had some labor strike and they took out few people. That day they agreed that it is a wrong thing that they had done. So since that day till today, they don't even they don't give anyone green slip to say that you go home, or sorry, pink slip to say that you just go home. So if what they do is, if you are not fit for a particular job, so in the same company they will give you some different job, but they will make sure that you have to be part of. So if you join the company, your life should be with us. That's what actually. So that is by understanding the psychology of the people. Third one is appreciation for the theory of knowledge. So when one has to understand the theory of knowledge actually. So, and I think in the world of WhatsApp, people are believing more of an information rather than the theory. So we need to go to the right teacher who has got the understanding of the theory and learn them. So they say that it is always learn from the right guru. That means the guru who has the knowledge, he will impart the right knowledge. Today, what has happened is, in Corona world, we have seen that there are so many people who have become experts in Corona, but they themselves are not doctors. So the knowledge should come from the theory. So if he is a doctor, so he is eligible to talk about Corona. So but whereas we read here and there on some WhatsApp messages and suddenly become that information we take and start becoming preachers. So what he said is, you need to understand the theory, and then theory is the knowledge and not that one. So these are few things which he told, and there are some interesting advices that he gave to Japanese corporation. One such thing is, when you look at this particular thing, so there is somebody who is trying to push that stone up, and there is another person who is working to push it down. So this is basically a competition to say that how much you push, how much I push. But what Deming told to Japanese organization is, cooperate with each other, push that one on the other side. So that means you will have the basically sweets to eat actually. So he taught them that never try to do competition, you cooperate with each other. So competition is, sometimes we say that it is good, but what his wordings of competition, his wordings of cooperation is, you keep on improving what you are doing. So but you set yourself a baseline, telling that yesterday I was here, so today I am doing this better, so tomorrow I am doing even better. So you set yourself goal to improve, but don't try to say that he is better, so I need to be better. He is doing like this, so I need to do. And he is selling that one, so in the same market I need to sell. No. So he said that you cooperate instead of compete actually. So very, very important message that he gave. Second thing he told is about ranking. So every time we see that, oh, Mr. A wins, Mr. B is the second, Mr. C is the third one. So we always talk about that one. So what he told is, no, you make all of them as winner. So bring them all together. So you cannot rank them just because they ran the milestone. All of them were running together. So everyone is important in the organization. And with everyone, the organization is performing and the economy is changing. So you all need to be together, and then you all need to be winning, rather than one wins and the other one says that, oh, you are number 2 or number 3. So I think in the Indian education system also, this is what is now we see in many schools which is coming. So they don't try to rank any people, telling that you are rank 1, you are rank 2, you are rank 3. They are telling that you all put together into grade A, you all put together into grade B, you all put together into grade C. So basically that is trying to tell that you are all performing equally better. A very nice message he said is, work for your customer, not for the bosses. So this is, I think, in many industry, including India, everywhere the practice is that put a red carpet for the boss. So whenever he is coming, so you try to please him. But in Japan, so they all make together, they work. So they are all together when it is a boss and the employee. But what they make is, they make their customers, so they lay down a carpet for their customers. So whenever there is a customer, so both the boss and the lowest level person are together, and then they try to kind of project the same image of the company and then try to sell it. So anytime when there is a mistake that happens, so we always try to kind of blame and say that you did it, so there is a mistake, so you can't do it. So for example, this guy is very short, and you are expecting somebody to kind of serve a coffee there, who is sitting at a table which is much taller than what he is. So what he told is, there is always an this is basically a management problem, because the management has not set it right, because one side they have made the table too high and the person is sitting there and the guy who is serving is somewhere in the floor where he is very at a lower level. So he said that in the industry 96% of the time it is only the management who is responsible for all the things that happens, though they blame others for it, but then 96% of the time it is the management which is responsible for it. So that is what he told, and asked that it's try to improve that one, and it is a management fault. But if you give him the right tool, probably he jumped it and he is ready to kind of serve the tea. So that is what he is doing. So this is what he taught to Japanese organization. The next one is Japanese, they started looking at everything. So there is always a room for improvement. So you should never get satisfied telling that I am producing the best, because when Japan started producing the best quality product, they were not ready, they were not competing with anybody in the world, because nobody in the world was as producing the quality as Japanese were producing. So they competed with themselves. What was my yesterday's quality production? Today it has to be much better. Nausha Corporation, when Motorola was producing the television, so for every 100 television, there used to be 130 defects when Motorola was producing it, and under Nausha Corporation, when it took it from Motorola. But then that Nausha Corporation got replaced by, I mean, they were the first company to kind of learn dubbing lectures just before 1980 in America. They were the first company to invite. When they invited him and did the learning, they reduced it to, like, for every 100 televisions that they were producing, so only 4 defects were made. I mean, basically, it's the defects levels reduced from 130 to 4 defects. So I'm not talking about 100 television defects, but there are 130 defects in 100 televisions. So he said that you need to look at what you are doing and you need to keep on improving. So there is always a room for improvement. You can't say that, no, I don't have the right tool, I can't do. No, you need to find a way and then improve yourself. And he said that you might have the best of the goods with you, but you cannot. It's like having that I have the best of the bat, but you cannot become the best of the player just by having best of the goods. It's like this was very well explained by Dr. Edward Deming. He used to always give an example of an orchestra. So if you are in an orchestra, if everyone has got best of the instruments, so that doesn't produce the best of the music. But if you want the best of the music to come out of it, so they need to be all synchronous. And the weakest who is there, you need to strengthen him. So if somebody is not giving the right music, you need to improve him. So it's not his instrument which is responsible, it is he whom you need to improve it. If he improves, then the whole music system becomes right, and then it starts working as a chain. So he said that look at the not just good components, but it is also as a good system, so which is important rather than just a component. And one key message, because he also was frustrated by when he came to Japan and with his teaching. So because he was ready to teach Americans in 1940s and 50s, so, but Americans were not ready to listen to him. But of course, they paid $1 million and started listening after 40 years, so which is in 1980. So when he was in 40 years old, he was trying to teach to Americans, and when many of them were not ready to listen. One of the key messages that he was giving is, good financial statements are not the right measures for your industry. You may tell that one that my profits are so much, my company size is so big. You may say that, but they are not the right measures. The right measures are, you need to measure how your productivity is, what better quality you are producing, how you have improved from last year to this year, and how you stand in the world market. So that is what is key, not your financial numbers. Even today, many American organizations focus on financial numbers. So basically what he said is that a snake can probably eat an elephant and try to show that my company is such a big company, or I am kind of, my financial balance sheet is so big. But for every such meal, there is a stomachache comes actually. So it will not last long, unless you have prepared to kind of go and stand with it. So this was typically to the American management where he got this and promoted. Most opt for the professionals and today's students is what he talked about is a degree is not the end of education. So everyone thinks that I got my degree, so that means I have a certificate, I can go into the industry and I have achieved everything. He said that that is a degree, diplomas or these kind of certificates, they create an illusion of achieving something. So they give you an illusion that you have achieved something, but in true sense you have not achieved. If you want to be in the industry, it just gives you that when you have got a degree, that means that it is just talking about you got a learner license, now you start learning more and more. I think software industry, many of the Indians are aware about that. Software industry gives today every day a new learning, and then if you are not upskilling yourself, so you are not fit for the industry, which has happened and which we can see that one. So this he told probably in 1940s or 1950s to the people, telling that degree is not the end of education, so it just creates an illusion. What you need to be doing is every day you need to be learning, or every time you need to go to the educational institute, because educational institute has got research and they have better knowledge. So you need to go back to the colleges, learn something new, and come back and adopt and implement in the industry. This even today, many people don't do that one, but Japanese companies are very, very good in that one. So they always have a tie-up with the institutes. They bring the teachers to their premises, or they send their students for always learning. So you learn something new, learn new technology, techniques, management skills, or technical skills, and then come back. So every time they promote it for their own employees. So this is something which is very, very unique that he promoted. So as he said, I think in his profound knowledge, so information is not knowledge. Knowledge comes from a theory. So we always, I think this is very wrongly used in the recent days. So we think that everything that Google gives is you search and some information comes, and then we think that, oh, I know about that subject. No. If you want to really know about that particular subject, so you need to read the theory, and knowledge comes only from the theory. Information can give you an illusion of having a knowledge, but that is not a knowledge. Like, for example, I can read some medical book, but I cannot become a doctor overnight to operate some patient, or I cannot become an advisor to some patient, start telling that tomorrow onwards I'll start doing. You need to go to the professors and get that theory knowledge back to you, because they have learned, they know the theory and what exactly it is happening. So he said that information is not knowledge. Knowledge comes from the theory. So go and get the theory right rather than getting just the information. Okay, so basically, this is what I put it. So it's not his thought, but what basically he wanted to tell the Japanese industry is like, every day morning when in Africa, a gazelle wakes up and it knows that it has to run faster than the lion, actually the fastest lion, so that is there, otherwise it will get killed. So there is a gazelle and then there is a lion which are in a race. So and then the gazelle has to make sure that it has to run faster than the fastest lion, otherwise it will get killed. Also it need to know that it has to at least outrun the last gazelle, otherwise it will get killed. So you cannot be last in the race. So you need to be running faster than the last person, otherwise you will be killed. So that is what is the message he tries to give. So it doesn't matter whether you are a lion or a gazelle. So you need to be running faster than what you were running yesterday. So that is what is going to kind of keep you alive as an industry, or as an economy, or as a country's economy. So it's he said that, so you just keep on running and you need to be doing better and better on every day. So that's the note, kind of a note he tried to give, so which I consolidated. So this is basically what he contributed to the American economy.